Hello and welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 46, the podcast where we discuss books, the genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm ARD Clerk.
Sorry, I'm
You have to unmute yourself.
Electra.
And today we have a very special guest for you. We have Carol Van Natta.
Hi.
Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
I should ask before we start recording. So,
well, lucky you.
Right, yeah, well, trial by fire. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I write science fiction and fantasy. I have a space opera series currently out that I'm in the middle of, and things are about to get very exciting in the Big Dan story arc because I always write in series. Even if I imagine that I'm writing just a single book, no, it's a series. Because my muse just is working in the background going, here, isn't this wonderful? I write, I've also written paranormal romance, and we'll have a new paranormal romance series out next year. And I co-wrote a retro science fiction comedy, farce really, and I have cats. So there it is.
Okay, how did you get into writing then?
So I've been writing all my life, and I probably started getting more serious about it when I and my friends all wrote fan fiction for Star Trek. And we had this whole interconnected universe, and we'd pass each other stories and things like this. And I read mine later, and they were pretty uniformly awful. I mean, just really bad. Because, you know, every trope, teenage trope that you can think of were in my stories. But I think it kind of instilled in me the love of expressing the writing in the way that I wanted to. And then, of course, life happened because I like to eat regularly and sleep indoors. So I got jobs and, you know, relationships and no children, but none of that. But relationships and jobs and things. And then the whole publishing industry changed drastically when self-publishing became respectable. Before, it was just, for those people who are listening and don't know, it was considered vanity press, and it was something that you sneered at the same way that you sneered at people who, you know, exposed themselves on the street. So but self-publishing became respectable and profitable, and suddenly the publishing companies, the traditional publishing companies, were no longer the gatekeepers for what they think would sell or buy, and they couldn't. And if they took a year to get back to you with their no answer, you didn't just have to put up with that anymore. So that, plus reading like Lindsay Buroker and Nalini Singh to realize that how to structure a big plot arc, and then reading J.D. Conrath, and again Lindsay Buroker in her independent author adventure series of stuff said, hey, you know, this self-publishing stuff is for me. And especially because I really like being in control of my own destiny, and the thought now of giving over my work to a publisher and going, oh, please don't hurt me, just really isn't me anymore. So they'd have to come to me with a damn fine offer before I'd be giving up my work to a traditional publisher anymore.
And there's
so that
actually
was probably a very long way of saying I like to write.
Well, a love of writing is kind of mandatory for this insanity, but also a lot of traditional publishers are seeking out the indie authors that are finding their own success and offering them deals that some of them can't refuse. So, yeah.
If the Audible people came to me, or the Tor people with the audio books, I'd be like, where do I sign?
You know, Tor was the first place I submitted my novel, and they rejected me because it actually wasn't a good fit. But it was a copy of a copy of a copy of a rejection letter. I'm like, could you maybe have like fresh Xeroxed it or something? I don't know.
Right. Do you still have the mimeograph in the corner?
I'm like, yeah. Can I at least get high off this? Because the mimeograph.
Yeah. So, exactly.
The first book that I read of yours was the book 1 of the Central Galactic Concordance, so Overload Flux. Loved
Yes.
it. Loved it. So it's a science fiction romance. And you're actually here to speak a little bit about another book in this series that came later on.
Yeah.
Let me see. We've got
So I
a lot
actually
of them.
have like 6
Jumpers.
Now.
Why don't you tell us about that series?
Okay, so the Central Galactic Concordance series starts with Overload Flux, and there are 4 novels and 2 novellas. And the one that you're talking about is the one that I just finished and released in August, called Last Ship Off Polaris G. And that was a novella, but it's actually a prequel to the series, because in part because I didn't think I could. I'm having trouble with my current work in progress, and I can talk about that in a minute if you really care. But otherwise, there's a character in there that I wanted to explore his history before I write him in about book 6, because I'm currently working on book 5. So I have Overload Flux is book 1, Minder Rising is book 2, Pico's Crush is book 3, Jumper's Hope is book 4. Jumper's Hope probably is think of it as 1, 2, and 3, just kind of putting the key in the car, in the lock, and putting the seatbelt on and checking that you've got the map. And book 4 is we're starting the engine. And book 5, the one that I'm writing right now, that's giving me a little bit of trouble, is The Flame Starts. The whole series is really rebellion. And anybody who's lived in exciting times or interesting times knows that living in them is actually kind of dark and very stressful. So I deliberately included romance in my series so that you don't want to go and like slit your wrists by the time you're done reading my series that's about revolution. And on the surface, the civilization seems to be very positive and future, and we're expansion and stuff like this, but there's a whole underlevel where it's not so good, and that's the source of the revolution. And so I'm creating characters that I hope people like. My readers seem to respond to them, and giving them romances so that each novel ends with hope. And that's my series. And I have probably, I'm going to guess that it's going to be 9 or 10 books by the time it's done. So I'm right in the middle. So the messy middle. Oh boy, no wonder I'm having trouble.
Wow, that's ambitious. So you're also involved in a Pets in Space anthology?
Yes. So Pets in Space, there are 2 of them. There was one that was published last year, and that was just kind of like a fun little anthology, and they decided to do it again this year, and I begged and pleaded and asked nicely, and maybe sent some bribe money or something so that I could be in it too, because I loved the idea. I mean, if we're going to the stars, we're taking our pets. I guarantee you we're taking our pets. So the idea of Pets in Space was just this wonderful idea, and so I took a little cul-de-sac in my universe and just wrote a little story about a little piece that's actually just been sitting in the background. It's kind of like been texture and just color for the other, for part of the whole universe. And I was actually able to focus on just a little on that little piece. And then the other reason that I liked Pets in Space is that they have they support a charity. The first the 10% of the first month's income, gross profits, is going to a charity called Hero Dogs. And what they do is raise, train, and pair service dogs with disabled American veterans who need a helping hand. And it improves their quality of life, and it helps them regain the independence, because we're really good these days, we humans, and we modern society, at helping people survive catastrophic war injuries that they never would have survived before. But we're not so good about dealing with the aftermath and the people who and the chronic pain, and what do you do when you lose a limb and stuff, because our society is built assuming that you're independent and that you can deal for yourself, and if you can't anymore, that's kind of an issue, and we don't do so well with that. And so the Hero Dogs charity I loved, and it kind of helped inspire some of the parts of my story too. Most of the stories, and there's like 12 authors in this book, and the paperback book is like this doorstop of a big fat book. And we did do paperback because some of our readers want it, and man, that thing's heavy. But most of the authors have 1 or 2 pets, and I have 17. Hi, I'm Carol. I have a pet problem. So
You have 17 pets?
yeah,
In the story. Or,
in the story.
Okay.
For pets, it's called Pet Trade.
Okay.
And each of the main characters is involved in one way or another in rescuing pets, and that's why there are so many.
Very interesting. Well, it sounds like it's a very worthwhile organization to support. So we definitely commend you guys for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we like it. It touches my heart every time I think about it, because there's just so many things that we don't do so well for the veterans, and yet we like to trot them out and say, look, I'm very pro-veteran. Oh, but go away.
So tell us about when you were on your author journey and you were at the beginning of your author journey. What was, let's say, the biggest hurdle that you encountered as a new author?
So when I first published my book, I probably should not have. I probably should have waited, but I was incredibly impatient. I needed the book out there, and I needed people to see it, and I wanted people to read it and review it and tell me what they thought. And of course, with one book, you generally have to give that away to a lot of people and find people to give it away, and then beg and plead and say, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please write a review. And then if they do, you go, oh, they don't like passive voice. I'm so sorry. I didn't use passive voice, but I did tend to do a lot of, non-active stuff, non-active words. I might, I probably will never go back and rewrite things because I just don't have enough time. There's too many stories in my head that need to be told to where I couldn't really go back and rewrite anything. I couldn't justify that. But I can look at it now, a couple of years later, and read it and say, yeah, I can see where I could have tightened that up. Hopefully I learn from that and move forward. But I think my biggest hurdle was my impatience to just get it done and keep going and move on. And how come people aren't buying my book?
Let's flip to the other side of the coin and talk about, tell me one thing that you could credit your level of current success to.
I'm going to say that's interacting with other authors on Facebook, because I learned so much from what other people have either failed at or done well or something like that. And, not every technique and not everything is going to work for you, even though you duplicate it exactly or you do it right for you. But I have learned so many things from other people, and I hope that I can give that back as I go on too, because people's kind and patient advice about, you really need a newsletter. No, you really need a newsletter. No excuses. You need a newsletter. Was invaluable to me. I would not be 5 books into this series if, I'd only sold 17 copies. So I think it was finding other people online, other authors, and them very generously giving of their time and advice and encouragement and all that.
So amongst our little group, I might be known as a whiny bitch, pardon my language, because I tend to get frustrated and aggravated, and this group of ladies are the ones that always give me advice and always support me and encourage me. So they're my tribe and they're my girls. But I think we're sort of in the same spot right now with our current work in progress, because you said you're also having trouble.
Yes.
I, as a new author, and we kind of touched on this with our last interview, I jumped around a lot, and I wrote pretty much strictly standalone novels, and I didn't stick to one genre. I wrote what I wanted to, and pretty much did what I wanted to. But now, I have to get serious about my business as an author, which chafes a little bit. It's like putting a corset on a little bit to the creativity. So when I whine about it and complain about it, then they slap me around and put me back on track. So I find that that's my current problem, is I have a plan and I need to finish this book in order to take that next step. Do you ever have trouble where you find that you're hesitant to complete a project, or you're hesitant to move forward with something because, I don't know, for me, if it's the fear of the unknown, like, oh my God, I've made this decision and now I have to do it. Or I don't know, I'm not in that place. Have you ever been there before, where you just really don't feel like you're in that spot where you need to be to finish something?
Once I get going, I don't have trouble finishing. Where I have trouble is either starting it because I'm outline dependent. Okay, so on the let's talk on the pantser versus plotter continuum. The pantsers are the people, the extreme pantsers are like Susan Smith and Eve Longley, who have some vague idea in their little head and maybe a character or two, and they sit down and they write, and magic happens, and I don't know
what that's all about. I don't know anyone like that.
I cannot do that. I just look at them and say, oh my God, that's magic.
She's being sarcastic.
On the other end of the continuum is people like Rachel Aaron, who has every beat outlined, and she's memorized the characters, and she's got pictures of them, and she's got a whole notebook and all that stuff, and I'm not there either. So I'm closer to the outliner than the pantser, but I leave myself room for inspiration and stuff. Where I find my trouble is always, if I'm having trouble, is my outline is flawed, and I need to go back and fix it, and I'm reluctant to go back and fix it because I know that if I do, I'm going to have to lose these 3 chapters that I just wrote, God damn it. And I must, because that's what the story needs. So that's where I get myself into trouble. I'm also horrible at writing short. I'm given a, like, Pets in Space is an example, the 25,000 word limit. My book came in, my draft, my great draft came in at 8,000 words over that. And I had lots of just agonizing cutting. This word and then, okay, well, maybe he could use, it was very annoying. And I've done it 3 times now, thinking I'm going to write something short, and it's not. Yeah. So I have to get better at short. Because
short's hard. Short is hard. I have a hard time with short. It's either too short, and the people are like, what the heck is this? Or then, I can't cut enough words. So I think we might have all been in that boat a few times. Yeah, I'm sort of on the extreme pantser side. I just sit down at my computer, have a vague idea, start with characters, go from there, always write. Whereas I know Elle likes bullet journals and plotting, and Paulina's trying outlining, and I have cost myself some words a couple of times in the past. It's always easier for me because I was writing standalones. I think when you come to a series and you have an overreaching story arc, you need to be very clear about where each book hits that arc. And so like for my Cyborg series, which is currently on hold thanks to the publisher, but I had an overreaching story arc, so I had to actually sit down and write it out, and I did. I'm the same as you, though. I kind of left myself some room, but I knew I had to hit this point. I had to hit this point. I had to hit this point. So that's about as basic outlining as I go. But I think that I can see where it would be difficult if you know that the problem's in your outline, but you know it's going to cost you some words.
Yes.
That hurts like cutting off a body part. You're like, oh, there goes my arm. Oh, that's that 10,000
Yes,
words I just had to toss in the garbage.
Oh, it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
have
for sure.
I have a whole file that's called the cutting room floor. I used to be in film, and I was an actor and stuff like that. And some of my scenes always ended up on the cutting room floor. So I have a file called cutting room floor, because then I can take those 3 precious chapters that I just wrote and I can put them over there, so I don't feel like I'm losing them all together. They have a little home by themselves, and sometimes I can actually use little pieces from them, so I feel better about keeping the cutting room floor. But every book has a cutting room floor file with just those things.
Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate.
Yep.
Okay, I think Paulina's up next.
Okay, it's my turn. So while she was talking, while everybody was talking, I just kept writing down questions. But so since we just talked about it, you know, about how you want to leave room for inspiration, I was just wondering, has a character ever, example, because it's hard to explain. Like, okay, when I was first writing, one of my characters was supposed to mate with someone, and he wouldn't listen. I couldn't write the book. Come to find out, he looks at me and goes, "I'm gay." So I was like, "Oh, that's why." Has a character ever done that, where you're trying to push and the book's not going anywhere?
Not yet. I could foresee it happening, though. It's never done it with my main characters, but I will say that some of my supporting characters have done surprising things for me. I was like, really? Oh, okay.
You're like, maybe, okay, we'll just go that way.
Yeah. And oftentimes I find that some little hook, my subconscious, I guess, or something, put early on in a book, later on, like in the exciting big space battle finish or something like this, it becomes really important. This tiny little hook that I put, that I wasn't even conscious of doing. I was just thinking, well, you know, yeah, they should do this in the coffee shop because, you know, that's important. Or, you know, what the heck, I'll just put it in the coffee shop. And later it's the fact that the coffee shop was owned by the dead or whatever, turns out to be the significant thing that saves them, or, you know, or how they discover who the bad guy was, or something like that. And I had no idea I was doing that. It was just there. And so some of my supporting characters have turned out to be in pet trade. I had a clear notion of which of the unconscious foreshadowing. Elle's writing this, and yes, my subconscious apparently speaks a lot behind the scenes. I had a pretty clear idea in pet trade, the animal that was going to save one of my characters, and that's not who saved her at all.
Okay.
And I got there and I was like, oh, well, of course, this makes much more sense. How come I didn't think of this?
Yeah, like some plots just sneak up on you.
Yes.
Which is good. That's why I couldn't outline. I did, like they said, I started outlining, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm sorry.
You know, Eve Longley said that she's written, probably 40, 50 books by now. And she said 3 times she tried outlining and she couldn't do it, and it was a complete failure, and she just had to walk away and say.
Yeah, I think because I've always journaled. Like growing up, my mom bought me a journal to write in to stop bossing my siblings around. Maybe that's why I've always just written straight, you know. I tried outlining and I'm like, this is stupid. This wastes way more time. I could have been halfway done with this book already. I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So, I was just wondering, you did mention again about service animals for the veterans. Yes. So I was thinking that's amazing idea. My brother actually has one. She's not here right now. She's old,
Say,
15 years old now. But I don't think people realize, like you were saying, that they need, you know, that they need help after. He's not a veteran. He has schizophrenic. He's schizophrenic.
right.
But she does the same thing basically that they do. Because she's trained, you know, to lead him home, to get him away from situations, to
Right.
make sure, you know, if he gets overstressed, to like all that kind of little things. And most people only realize that they think dogs are only meant for like the blind. Seeing eye dogs.
Yeah, no, they're
Or-
hearing dogs. There's dogs. I've known of dogs that can tell when someone is about to have an epileptic seizure before the person who has it knows it, and can alert the owner.
To sit down.
There's
There's rats. There's rats that sit on. There's a lady who comes to my job. She has a rat that sits right here. And you know, everybody else was like, oh, I'm like, no. I was like, that's good, because you start basically vibrating deep down, and the rat can feel it. And they asked her, and she's like, yeah, it's because she has seizures. And I was like, they were like, are you kidding? I'm like, no. There's so many animals out there.
Yes, yeah. Now
I'm like,
my
I
cats
love
are
that
all,
idea.
my cats are all lazy and spoiled creatures, and would only help if it was in their self-interest.
I
Like,
haven't heard of a cat service animal yet.
Does this mean you're not going to feed me?
Yeah.
But, so I've never heard of a service cat, but I will say that I have heard of people whose cats have saved their lives in terms of giving them something to get up for, giving them something to get out of their head for.
Emotional support animals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my father, when he was going Alzheimer-y and his brain was turning to Swiss cheese, the one thing that he would respond to is pets. And so we found a assisted living place that would let him keep his cats, because otherwise we could tell that he was just sinking further and further away from cognition.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you put the cat on his lap or talk to him about cats, he just came alive. And so, you know, the cat didn't know it. Cat's not being a service animal, the cat's being a cat, but it probably gave him 6, maybe 9 months more of engagement in the real world before his brain just went, you know, gone and whatever.
There are some times that I wonder if I'd trade my dog for one of my kids, actually. So, I mean, I probably wouldn't, because I don't know. But if it came down to it and the kidnapper was like, I'll give you back your dog if you give me that kid, I'd have to think about it really hard.
Well, you have to admit that the kids will hopefully care for you in your old age, and your dog's probably.
No, my oldest one was like, we'll get a nurse for you, Mom. And my youngest one was like, why? You can just go to a nursing home. So
Yeah.
I see my
we
future is not very bright. At least my dog would love me.
Yes.
But sorry.
Yes.
I live in a military town now. I live in San Diego. I grew up in 29 Palms. I'm always around military. And that's what I think that's really cool, just going back to the service animals, is the fact that every place out here and in 29 Palms caters to them. Like they have like the water bowls, they have like treats. I'm like, I came out here because I was like, oh, I'm going to San Diego, and I figured it wouldn't be the same. And I was surprised how they embrace them, like even the restaurants.
You know, I was just recently in Santa Barbara, and I saw a fair amount of that in Santa Barbara, and they have no particular military presence. I suspect that it might be something to do with the West Coast and the fact that you've got a more temperate climate.
Maybe.
That helps too. Fort Collins, where I live, which is about 70 miles north of Denver, I think they mean well, but Fort Collins is a very earnest town, but we're also a really very white bread town. And we're not a very military town. We have an ag school. So they don't quite know what to do with service animals here always.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No.
We have many bike trails though, and lots of beer places. So that's good.
It's an interesting adjustment to make, I think, from the fact, like I said, going from realizing that animals are not only CNI dogs, or
Right.
people, you know, if they're missing like when my brother had his, the one thing we had to fight for, they were like, but it's a dog. And we're like, yes. And, you know, she was, well, he's not blind, right? No. He's not missing. I'm like, I don't have to tell you what's wrong with him. He just need, you know, here's a letter saying he gets us.
Service dog.
Yeah. So, a little bit more, I think people are coming around to being accepting that you don't have to look like you're sick to have something wrong.
Yes. And I think in your brother's case, that's particularly true because my mother's generation thinks of all mental illnesses as just something that you absolutely do not talk about and you don't admit, and you lock granny in the attic.
And that's why you have serial killers during the 80s, is because they were all undiagnosed and running around. And let's don't talk about it.
And you know, we have this heroin epidemic right now. People are self-medicating because we are so piss poor at mental treatments. It's
get started on that.
Yes, and you know it better than any of us because you grew up with it and you're seeing it. And
no, we didn't grow up with it. He didn't get diagnosed till he was 19, but I'm his caregiver though.
Yeah. Well, and the people who are autistic too, and all those things. Yeah.
We got it all. My sister has Asperger's. She's high functioning, but she'll if she gets overwhelmed, she still lays on the floor, curls up. She's 30, and she'll get into a little ball and just rock.
There was a story on NPR just this morning about a man who is in his 30s, and he just had a meltdown episode, and he hadn't had one that bad since he was 11. And they went on StoryCorps this morning on NPR just to talk about that. Yeah. And say, you know, this is real and
it happens.
Yeah.
We just she just close herself in her house, and you know, she'll rock for a few hours, and then we'll go give her some wine. It makes her happy. Here's some wine.
Yes.
So just getting back to your stories real fast, so that Electra can ask questions. Sorry. I was reading about your, what is it called? Extras for readers.
Oh yeah.
I was blown away with that page. That is a lot of world building. How do you do that?
That's probably my favorite part besides the characters. So my process, if you will, starts with characters. They start with people, and then those people need a world. And so every time I think of some little note, I use a program called Evernote, which it's just this online thing that you can sync across devices, and you can get to it from the web and stuff like that. And other people use like Microsoft OneNote, and there's other competing things. I just have loved Evernote from the beginning, and so that's what I use. So wherever I am, if I'm in the car repair shop and I'm sitting there waiting, going, and I come up with some idea, like some just little tidbit, like, ooh, well, wouldn't that be interesting? I can go and write it down, and I do. Oh. So I have that whole, I have, you know, probably 20 different notes about the military and a bit about the government. And my significant other is, I call him the resident mad scientist. So I run the physics stuff by him. And my criteria is kind of like, does he go, well, I suppose you could do that? Or does he go, you want to do what?
You're like, which one do I want?
I tell him that my series is space opera. It is not a science textbook. So there will be things that I'm just going to assume, and I am never, ever, ever, ever going to explain. And I'm not going to explain it to you either, because you'll just laugh. So
that's how space travel works in the fantasy world.
Exactly. When I get in my car to go to work, I turn it on and I put it in gear and I drive. I do not stop to think about the internal combustion engine and how the spark plug does this and you have to gap it just right and all that stuff. No, I'm thinking about, oh, geez, do I have to do that report today or can I put it off till next week?
Next week.
Exactly. So I don't write hard science fiction. Nobody would mistake my books for hard science fiction because I have too much fun with the characters and, you know, the adventures and the big exciting space battles and things to be worried about how the damn engine works. So
I get turned off with those books. I know some people love those, but once I read a book and it's like get into the details, I'm like, and now I'm going to go into something else.
Yes.
There's
and the other books that
love that.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And the other books that I have trouble with are the military SF, where there you go into great detail about the battles and the tactics and the ships and things like this. And you could replace the characters with a jar of Carmex and a nail file, and they would still do.
Okay, that's not Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy is very technical. And I read for the Red October in 6th grade. And my 6th grade teacher took it away from me and told me to get something my age. I was so mad. So I told my mom, and then she had to give it back.
I hate it when teachers tell people, I hate genre shaming of any sort. It pisses me off. But all those of us who write romance, we've all had it. And those of us who read romance, we've all been, you know, had people sneer at us for whatever reason. And my male readers in particular are, I had somebody write to me once and say, thank you for not putting a naked man chest on the covers of your books, because that means I can read them in the station house and my buddies don't rib me for it. And I'm like,
naked chests don't sound. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna stop that one. Someone keeps telling me to put it on my covers, and I'm like, no.
Well, I remember being, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade, and I had this huge obsession with Clive Cussler, and I kind of still do, but like all of his Dirk Pitt novels. And like, well, that's an adventure novel. Don't you want to read a romance novel? Look, if I wanted a romance novel, I know exactly where the shelf is for romance novels. I want to read this right now. So, you know, nobody can tell you what you should or shouldn't read, and if they try to, then that's when you double fist it.
Oh yeah, or tell them yeah. Yeah, I usually do. Oh, my nose itches. Something fierce.
Yeah, for those of you that can't see the video, she's giving a salute with a certain middle finger.
I don't even try to hide it. I just go like this. I don't even try to hide it. Even at work. Yeah. Probably gonna get in trouble one day.
Yeah, me too. But you know, I'm old enough to where I can tell them, oh, bite me. And then that's it.
All right, so I did have a question. You said that your Overflux series.
My Overload Flux. That's Overload
Flux. Yes. Is about more of darker times. Do you use current events from today to as an influence?
Yes, I do, but I have two answers to that question. Yes, I do, but I kind of twist them and use them to show that for all that we have advanced and stuff like this, there are still fundamental things that are always going to happen. And I do that because, you know how each generation says, well, you know, kids today are this, and the world is falling apart because the kids don't have enough discipline, or they don't listen to their elders and things like this. There is writing that we have from early Roman times that says that is a complaint exactly like that, and it's by some Roman senator from like pre-BC times going, kids today, you know, what's the matter with them? There were civilization's dying. So what that tells me is that there will be certain threads that we will always have because it's human nature. We can't help it. So I take those and put those in my books, but I twist them for, you know, the future, the fact that this is, you know, 1,500 years or 2,000 years into the future. I also my friends will say, am I in your book? Am I in your book? And I say, why, yes, you are, but I'm not going to tell you where. And then they have to go. And then, and I've had some of them actually diligently read my series and say, well, which one was I? Was I that waiter in that? I'm like, maybe.
What
I do is I take pieces of people's characters and things that I see, and that annoying lady in the coffee shop with that voice that just makes you want to, your ears bleed and something like this. And the poor woman can't help it. That's just her voice. But then she has this, these sententious opinions about everything. She's the church lady in worse. And I take people like that and use those pieces of them that I see and put them in my stories. So yeah, I do. Modern events do show up in my books, but they're molded.
I like that. And then I would say, what is the your pet peeve as a writer?
Regarding myself, regarding others, regarding what?
Either the business or writing, or maybe a certain, like a trope or a genre.
Oh, okay. So in the business, I would say my pet peeve as a writer is other writers who do not think it's a business. Those writers who treat it as some sort of art, and readers can do this too, because they'll write to you and say, I really love your books, but why aren't they free? And you say, well, because I kind of like to eat regularly and sleep indoors and buy cat food. And they say, oh, but they should be free. I'm like, okay, well, so if you can get your landlord to accept free, or if you can get my mortgage payment to accept your kind thoughts for my books, I'll be happy to give you one free. But meanwhile, pay the $3.99. And authors who treat this as, I don't know what they're not in business. They're in art, or they're in preciousness, or or the latest example of authors behaving badly. They do something just really, really stupid, like, start a flame war on Goodreads or something for no reason. They took umbrage at somebody's review, and she's like, you have no control over reviews, lady. It's a business. Move on. So those are my pet peeves in the business, and maybe with snotty readers. My pet peeve in genre is a lack of warning about things that I find objectionable. Now, of course, that's totally subjective. But if you don't tell me that you've got dubious consent, if you don't tell me that you're suddenly going on a BDSM trick, if you don't give me fair warning that this is dark and maybe there's rape involved or something like this, I will angrily stab my e-reader with delete, because I really don't want to throw the e-reader across the room, but I would have, because those things just annoy me. I read a book by an author who I'm not going to name, because it's not fair to her, because I'm sure she's does well and things like this. But in the first chapter, this guy assaults this woman. He introduces her to pain during sex, and by the way, she's a virgin, and tells her, I'm taking you as my servant because you're wasted here. And we're supposed to like this guy. He's supposed to be the hero. And I'm like, buddy, I got you in the nearest alley. So that's what pisses me off about. I can deal with most tropes. I get tired of billionaire and secret babies and things, but people like those. But
I think for some odd reason, real fast, sorry. It seems to me like that trope is becoming a little bit more accepted, which I think is wrong. The fact that a man's a hero, but yet he's either physically or mentally abusing the girl.
Yeah.
Lately, and I'm just like, no. But they're becoming popular, and I find it odd with the popularity of women's rights coming back. So,
well, you know,
how that's going to work.
I will point out, though, that remember in the 70s when we were really having the first of the women's rights movements, the very best-selling books almost always had, or there was a lot of rapey men in those books, and they had rapey, look, nice service dog. They had rapey men, and sometimes the men who raped the woman in the beginning of the book ended up being the hero in the end who married her. So I think you're always going to have some of that. I don't know why. You know, it caused me want to, like I say, you know, got them in the alley and leave their bloody corpse. But that's not always me reading. So I think people should be able to read what they want. I just don't want to have to read it myself or be surprised by it.
Yeah, I think that rapey vibe kind of lasted until about the 80s. Because I remember some of the older paperbacks like at the library that they were kind of like that, and people were like, oh well, it's their historical romance, so that's
okay.
That's okay. And I'm like,
it's okay that we
really?
read in the past. Yeah,
no.
I read one book when I was 18. I was 15. I snuck it, but it was called Roses, and I read halfway through that book and knew it was wrong. And like the guy it was like historical, and he was like, well, you should be happy I'm using oils. Or he would get mad at her and just tie her up and throw her in the rushes. And I'm like, I'm not going to finish that book.
Yep.
So, yeah, wow, that was, I sometimes still think about that book, and I'm just like, wow, I was 15. That could have messed up my head.
Yes. Good that you were smart enough to recognize, no, this isn't for me. Thank you.
I actually just had that happen. I had one of my favorite authors. She's what I call a clicker, where you never read the blurb, you just click because it's
yeah Autobot.
I'm a clicker. Yes, I'm just click, and she had a disclaimer of a single, like it was a rape scene. But when I was like, okay, well maybe I could get past that, like one scene, maybe it's a situation where the heroine maybe it's part of her backstory or something.
Right.
So I continued to read it, and it was 5 scenes. 5 scenes, and now I feel like my trust with this author has been completely broken because I've never read anything like it before.
Right.
And I feel completely, and it's so funny because as a reader, you're like, oh my gosh, I love her. I know everything about her. She's great. And now I feel like this trust has been broken and I can't trust her anymore. And it's so funny to feel that way about an author, but when you read every single one of their books and you're clicking and you're part of their newsletter and everything else like that, now I totally feel that trust has been broken. And so I would agree with you. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves of in this genre is the warnings, because everybody's afraid if I give this warning out, you're not going to buy my book, and I want money because it's a business. And I would say I was hurt. I was so hurt by that, and that was just so funny that you had said that, because I had just encountered that last month.
Yeah, and I don't think those warnings hurt, because it's the same. Young authors always think my book appeals to everyone. No, it doesn't. You don't like everything you read. Why do you think everybody in the world is going to like your book? So find your readers who do like your books.
Right. And
if that requires, some people look for those warnings because they want the hot sex. So if it says, over 18, stuff like this, and they're like, oh yes, thank you. This is what I want. I don't want those namby-pamby little Christian romance inspirational things, because that's not what I read. I read the hot sex and I want it. So if you don't have that disclaimer, I don't trust that you have what I'm looking for. So I think they're good. Namby-pamby, yes. It's a word. It's a phrase.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one that uses it. That's really what the goes.
Yeah. So no, that was actually the two questions that I had.
So I have questions for you ladies. What are you working on right now?
I muted myself when I was talking, sorry. So, go ahead, Carol.
I'm gonna say I have questions for you ladies. What are you each working on right now? What's on your computer that you're supposed to be doing and you're talking to me instead?
I'm working on book 2 of my Wilderland series. I'm actually, well, technically I'm waiting for my beta readers to get back to me, but that's my active project, is Deceiving the Bandit Lord. And Amy, what are you actively avoiding?
Yeah.
I'm actively avoiding the final book in my Mythical Madness fantasy romance series. It's awful, and I hate it, and I would like to burn it at the stake, but I can't because I promised people I'd finish it. So, so I made this decision, and I told my readers already that I was going to narrow down my focus to one genre. So I have this huge obsession with the punk genres, which steampunk, diesel punk, deco punk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with that. As much as I love science fiction romance, as much as I love fantasy romance, whatever else you want to call those other books that I wrote that don't really fit anywhere, somewhere in between that. But I have to finish this series first. I had promised. So again, I'm not sure whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, if the punk does well, because I've made this huge decision in my writing career to take it more as a business and, say I might want to veer off my track and write science fiction romance, but no, I can't do that. I've made a decision I need to do it, at least not right now. I mean, later on, once I've, gotten myself together, I can do whatever I want, but, you have to make decisions that are hard at first. And, so yeah, that's why I'm actively avoiding it. So, yeah. Okay, Paulina, what are you working on?
I'm sorry, I like how Elle yelled at you. I am actively working on something that I have to editors on Monday.
Oh,
yeah, it's my genie. It's a genie story, a genie and a polar bear. I had to actually have one of my author friends, Renee. She called me, video chatted me, and got me over a hump. So I'm pretty sure I can just knock this out now. So it's my first kind of step into the shifter world, into the all shifter world, to see if maybe that's it's not a direction I really want to go in, but this is a fun little story. It's a genie.
Yeah.
How can it not be fun?
exactly.
So that's what I'm working on.
Exactly.
I'm currently book hopping. So I started off in one series, and then I got frustrated myself because I wasn't writing it perfectly. Because I'm a perfectionist, and I don't like to give my editor anything that's not like almost perfect.
Yes.
So so then I hopped over to another book and started writing that, so I didn't have to finish the other one, which was supposed to be done by the end of this year, which is not going to be.
Yes, I had heavy work commitments, and I realized that I was completely in deep, serious trouble with trying to finish this novel in this really time period. And so I stopped it and I went and wrote the novella because I figured I could handle that during this really busy work period. And I'm glad that I did that, because I think I would have exploded.
Yep, I know how that. Yeah, I got to get over those insecurities, though, about, just the fact of being perfect, because that's really what you pay an editor for. But like you said, it's a business too, so you don't want to get to the point, where you're spending gobs of money either, because like you said, it's a business. But
right.
But in the same sense, I have to, at some point, I've got to let somebody else look at it and take care of the mess that I
Yep.
have.
And you can't edit a blank page, so just get it written. Did you have any other questions for us, Carol?
I don't, but
Okay.
it's been fabulous.
Why don't you tell us where we can find you?
So you can find me on the web at vannatta.com. That's my website. I'm not terribly there very often. I am, however, on Facebook, usually pretty much every day. So I'm Carol Van Natta, author. That's CarolVannattaAuthor. But I'm sure Elle will probably like put this in the notes or something like that, so you don't have to remember that. And my books are on Amazon, iTunes, Kobo, Nook, and Google Play. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, Amy, I wasn't going to ask, but Amy reminded me that we normally do a giveaway, and you can say no because I totally forgot to prep you for this. But we normally do a giveaway. If you want to do an ebook giveaway of one of your books, like people can comment on our blog and ask you a question.
You bet.
Okay, which book would you like?
Well, I'll give them over. Let's do Overload Flux because that's book 1. But they can also do Last Ship. I'll give them a choice if whichever one they want.
Okay.
They can have any of my books for free. Any one of my books for free. So if they already read Overload Flux, maybe they want to read Mind of Rising or whatever. So just any one of my books for free and I'll be happy to share. Okay.
So in order to qualify for that giveaway, you do need to make a comment on our blog, which is focusonfantasyromance.wordpress.com. We give them 30 days, so October 22nd from today's date. And I think that's it. Hang on a second. Okay. So thank you for joining us. If you like the podcast, please like, comment, and share. If you use iTunes, please leave us a review. This has been episode number 46. Good night.